Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Franchise Interviews on Blog Talk Radio, asking the franchipreneur who owns one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott, with my co-host, Don Johnson. And if you've ever dreamed about owning your own business, then you've come to the right place. Today we have a great show. We're meeting with franchise author Julie Bennett. And Julie just wrote the Franchise Times Guide to selecting, buying, and owning a franchise. And Julie is a regular contributor to our favorite magazine, Franchise Times. And Julie also writes the Franchise Insight column for StartupJournal.com, which is the Wall Street Journal site for entrepreneurs. Her articles have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the Chicago Tribune, and the Hispanic Business Journal. And that's coming up in segment 2 of today's show on Franchise Interviews on Blog Talk Radio. Our first segment today is being brought to you by Franchise Interviews, LLC. And Franchise Interviews gives an up-close and behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com. You can hear and read interviews, as well as get insight tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show on Blog Talk Radio, where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisors, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And our monthly franchise newsletter, which is a must-read for anyone looking to buy a franchise. And Don, welcome back to another edition of Franchise Interviews on Blog Talk Radio on this January, 24th, 2008. How's your week and day going, my friend?
Going well, Marty. Yeah.
It's good.
How about yourself? Having a nice week?
Yeah, having a nice week. Well, I wanted to congratulate you on your Giants. I imagine you're excited. I know you're having a Super Bowl party this year.
Yeah, that caused me a lot of stress, that game at the end. But yeah,
I imagine so.
Definitely excited. Fun. Giants are in the Super Bowl. Didn't expect it, so you got to wait out. I guess this other week. It's 2 weeks between the final conference game and the Super Bowl. But we're having a few friends over, so I'm looking forward to it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's always a lot of fun, especially when it's someone that you like, and you follow.
Right.
So, so that's great. It was a nice surprise for you, having the Giants in the Super Bowl. I didn't expect it, but
definitely should be a pretty high-rated Super Bowl with the New England Patriots being undefeated. So it should be interesting.
What are their chances of winning? It's I guess I don't know. I don't want to say it's going to be a good game.
It's a pretty high point spread. The Giants are, I think, close to 2-touchdown underdog. That'll change a little bit, but yeah, it's Giants played them tough a few weeks back. They played New England last game of the year, and then that made New England become 16-0, undefeated for the regular season.
That's right.
So this is the big rematch.
That's great. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll be watching that game as well. Our last show we met with special guest Mark Burson of Central Bark Doggy Daycare, Don, and Barkley Ventures Inc. is an innovative company created specifically for those interested in entering the ground floor of one of the country's fastest-growing industries, dog daycare. And their purpose is to partner with passionate, creative, dog-loving entrepreneurs to build their network of the finest dog care facilities in the nation. And they have a great tagline, "Come run with the big dogs." What were your thoughts on last week's show?
Well, definitely. I mean, we're seeing a growth of pet franchises, and and I was pretty impressed with the high percentage of U.S. households just having pets, especially dogs in general. So it really, I can see how Central Bark is really having success and growing, and it's an interesting franchise. It seems like, Marty, you really have to be obviously a pet and dog lover to own a franchise like that.
If you and I would be good for that franchise, I mean, I love dogs, but I don't know if I'm passionate enough about dogs to, go into something like that. But you know what? There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are diehard dog lovers, and this is a perfect match for them, So
and people love their dogs and will do anything, will pay extra expense to make sure they're fine. And it seems like their service is a little bit of a peace of mind type of franchise, and I like the repeat business aspect.
Absolutely.
When people go away, they just want to have comfort and some peace of mind knowing their pets, well taken care of. And it's interesting. They get the pet out there and exercise them, and it's
a social experience, Don. It's like your dog going to a dance.
Right.
It's very interesting. The gentleman that created the whole concept. Hats off to him. It's very, very creative. Nice numbers, too. I think the number that Mark gave us last week was a $26 billion industry.
Right.
That's some pretty serious numbers, But, yeah, and it's more than just a kennel, Typically when you take your pet to a kennel, dog just stays in that spot and they're sedentary. They don't really move around much, and so this is a real social experience for the dogs. And I tell you, when you go to the website, I was really blown away just seeing how the whole thing works, So
Right.
I think this franchise is appropriate. It's definitely not for everybody,
Right.
I mean, you're not going to see 32,000 of them like a McDonald's on the planet, but I think they certainly are onto something. So I'd like to keep my eye on these guys, and see just how far they go.
And even in a tough economy, I don't think people will skimp when it comes to their pets and
That's
spending
true.
and making sure they're fine or well taken care of if they're away. So that's what's nice about that franchise. All businesses, I guess, some type of effect in a down or troubled economy, but I don't think it's as affected for a franchise and business like that, Marty.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, you cut back there, and pets have certainly become part of the family today.
Right.
A lot more than if you remember 20, 30 years ago, where it seems like somewhere in time, the pet just increased as far as becoming a member of the family or a member of society. You see people all over the place with their pets
Right.
today, and they have the pets are wearing clothing and all sorts of things, So it really is. It's just incredible.
Oh, my parents drop their dog off at our house. We just don't give them tap water. We give them that nice spring water.
Do you really? There you go. It's exactly what I'm talking about, So
Yeah.
I think they're onto something, So I'd like to have those guys back next year, and just see, how many franchises they opened, what's new in their business, as we know, a franchise always typically does go through changes and things like that as they grow and become successful. So
Right.
very interesting. What do we have going on today, Don?
Today we're meeting with franchise author Julie Bennett.
That's great.
Author of the Franchise Times Guide to Selecting, Buying, and Owning a Franchise. It's in bookstores now. You can buy it on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble online, with anecdotes and advice from current franchisees and franchisors. This is a book every would-be entrepreneur should read before signing a contract and buying a franchise. So we're excited about having her on and hearing all about the book.
Absolutely. I don't know if you read some of the quotes. I always like to read the quotes in the back of a book, Don. If people who actually read the book. Listen to some of these. It says, this book is full of valuable insights and practical advice. As you said, a must-read before investing in any franchise. At McDonald's, we believe our franchisees are the reason for our success, and that comes from John Kujawa, who's the Vice President of Franchising at McDonald's USA. Here's another one. It says, examines, assesses, and explains franchising better than any book we've seen. It should be read by everyone in franchising and is a must-read for everyone thinking about getting into franchising. That comes from Bob and Lynn Kaplan, franchise we're familiar with, Money Mailer franchisees for 15 years. Here's another one. A thorough and brutally honest, a very balanced view of franchising. I've been in the franchise industry more than 20 years, and I wish I had a book like this back then. And that comes from Melanie Bergeson, who's the CEO of Two Men in a Truck, who I think we might have even referenced on the show in the past.
Right.
So, and, you and I have our copy of the book, and I think it's fantastic, so I'm looking forward to having Julie, talk about the book and why she wrote it and just...
Yeah, I've been reading it. A very nice book.
You guys were actually referenced in that book. Did you know that? I don't know if you saw that.
Didn't see that yet, but I really like what you just said.
I was reading, he was getting towards the, I guess like 3/4 through, and I saw Diamond Financial reference in there. I think it was a quote from Steve, actually.
Oh, yeah? Wow.
Yeah, so I said,
Interesting.
So I saw that this morning. I said, oh, my God. I said, I don't know if Don saw that. So congrats on that.
Yeah, thanks.
That's a good job. This is an interesting article, Don. I think you're going to like this. Dunkin' Donuts, as you know, we're familiar, being in the northeast part of the country, everyone seems to know Dunkin' Donuts, the place. Right. They're now selling packaged coffee in supermarkets. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I'm not sure. Yeah, it was very interesting that Dunkin' Donuts will put their product in. I mean, it makes sense, putting it in some of the major stores nationwide. It
does, absolutely. But it also makes one ask the question, is this, is it good for franchisees or is it bad for franchisees, So I kind of got some information, a little article from the Associated Press. And again, this started several months ago. It says, packaged Dunkin' Donuts coffee will be sold in the likes of Walmart, Kroger's, BJ's Wholesale Club, and CVS in a bid to get customers to brew the brand at home. It says for Canton-based Dunkin', the retail distribution deal with Procter & Gamble is more than just getting existing restaurant customers to buy the packaged version while grocery shopping. And I will tell you, I'm a big fan of Dunkin' Donuts. Connie and I buy the package of coffee every week now. So I was just kind of thinking, does it have a positive effect or a negative effect on their franchisees? I have the ability now to make Dunkin' Donuts coffee at home, and I could just drink it all day if I want to. I don't really have to make a trip anymore, So
I think people like just the convenience of it being made for them correctly, and that they can buy a few other things there while they're at Dunkin' Donuts, and maybe buying it at the stores, they'll pick up some new coffee drinkers that'll then eventually go to the stores. But I see your point on the flip side.
Yeah.
It might make some of the franchisees upset that now they're buying their coffee elsewhere instead of going
it actually did. There's something that I wanted to talk about, because again, as I was asking, is it good or bad for franchisees? There's a great website I found. It's called franchisepundit.com, and a blog. You see these franchise blogs all over the place now by Ryan Knoll. Just a couple things here. It says how much of the franchisee sales were derived from in-unit packaged coffee sales. Probably a small portion, and the profit margins on packaged coffee beans are nowhere near the cup of coffee margin, which is 95%. It's pretty high. But with consumers bypassing the visit for a cup of coffee and a pound of medium roast beans, same-store sales will be negatively impacted as a small portion of sales shift from the franchisee to the grocery store. So they're saying here that, there will be some impact. Obviously, the new owners ran the numbers, and any slowdown in franchisee sales will be more than made up by the P&G coffee distribution deal. This is something interesting. It says how to protect yourself. And I don't think we've ever spoken about this on the show, so I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. It says the impact of brand leveraging through distribution deals and internet sales by the franchisor is increasing feverishly and should be considered when buying a franchise. There's really only one way to protect yourself with this kind of scenario. Ask the franchisor to include a cannibalization clause, or it's more nicely called a territory commission, in the franchise agreement to credit or pay you as the franchisee a percentage of all the sales derived in your buffered territory as compensation for your lost opportunity and lost sales, and to align your interest with the brand regardless of whether the sale transaction takes place in your store or in a retail outlet. That's pretty clever, isn't it? If you think
definitely.
About it.
I can see definitely why the franchisee would want that, because you spend a lot and invest to open up one or a few stores, and this can come out of the blue. Has nothing to do with your performance and hard work, where all of a sudden the franchisor is selling their product in other stores, so it can hurt your business. I just wonder how many franchisors would agree to this type of clause.
I totally agree. And we've had let's say franchises let's say we had Miami Rice Pudding on our show 6 months ago. What would happen if they sold a lot of franchises? And by the way, they're not doing this, by the way, but they started selling their rice pudding in a supermarket.
Right.
Would that have an impact on a franchisee's sales? Probably some type of impact. Again, it may not be significant, but it could be. So what this blog is actually saying is, come up with a territory commission or a cannibalization clause in the franchise agreement. Again, that franchise agreement, again, before you sign anything, there is some negotiation. And we've had experts on the show before, saying that's one of the importance of hiring a franchise attorney. They would bring that, to...
Exactly. I was just going to say that. It's even more the reason to have an attorney specializing in franchise for these things that you wouldn't normally think about as you're going through all the guidelines.
Who would think about that? Think about all the franchisees out there for Dunkin' Donuts, and I can go on with the article. There's lots of blogs out there. But from what I understand, some of them are a little upset about this, about saying that it's taking money out of their pockets. And I'm just thinking of my own personal experience, because I have one of those coffee mugs from Dunkin' Donuts, so I don't really need to go to Dunkin' Donuts anymore. I have the package here. It really almost tastes just the same, and I'm not a big donut person. I try to avoid them, but, you have a good point, too. Now, what Dunkin' Donuts is saying, though, is that this whole strategy it's increasing brand awareness, so some people who don't normally go to Dunkin' Donuts, they might buy a package of it, say, wow, this is incredible. I wish I knew about this years ago, and they'll become a regular customer to Dunkin' Donuts. So there's
a real strong argument on both sides.
There is.
I can understand Dunkin' Donuts wanting to, keep up with their competition and make sure people have convenience in buying it, building brand awareness and so forth. But then, the big question is how does that affect the franchisee and make sure that they're protected.
I totally agree. I mean, it could be positive or negative, so I'm not sure which way it's going to go. So, again, it's something that, we'll keep our eye on. But I like that whole strategy, though, of coming up with that, what they call a territory commission or territory clause, I think is what they referenced it as,
Yeah, my wife's a big Dunkin' Donuts fan, and
she is, yeah.
I can see her brewing her own, but, we'll continue to still go to the store.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll still continue to go as well, but I mean, it just, for me, having the ability to work from home saves me a trip from going down into Easton, which is the closest place I can get Dunkin'. And
my son loves the Munchkins, so that's a whole big
really?
thing for him going to the store and him getting a bag of the Munchkins. He's 3.5 years old, so
right.
That's a big thing. Him telling me after I come home from work, Daddy, I got Munchkins today. I went to Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, that's something. Well, what's going to happen when they start selling Munchkins in the store then? It's just.
Well, then we draw the line and we pick it in front of that supermarket, Marty.
There you go. So I just thought that was very interesting. I'm going to have to keep my eye on that. There's so many franchise blogs out there, and really interesting topics. And again, you and I, we talk about the positives and the negatives about franchising. But this is just something. Our purpose is to educate our listeners on franchising.
Right.
Again, that's why Julie also wrote the book. To educate people on franchising because it certainly isn't for everyone.
Right. Definitely.
She's going to talk about that. So I know you had some interesting things you wanted to discuss as well.
Yeah, and keeping with the theme of interesting stories in franchising, here's something from the Charlotte Business Journal written by Ashley London titled Hungry Howie's is Finding Strong Appetite for Growth.
Yeah, I saw this.
Yeah, it says, Marty, when Eric Fairbanks packed up and moved to North Carolina from Michigan to launch a business in 2005, he didn't know how hungry people would be for his pizza franchise. Last month, the ambitious 28-year-old entrepreneur, that's what's interesting about this article, is that we're finding more and more younger people having a lot of success in franchising.
I agree.
He opened his fourth Hungry Howie's Pizza and Subs restaurant at Old Sugar Creek Road in North Carolina. Fairbanks hopes to open as many as 20 locations throughout the Charlotte area, including 4 in the next 2 years. Fairbanks says the entrepreneurial bug hit him early in his college career while he was working as a delivery driver for a national pizza chain. Thinking back, Marty, when I'm in college, I wasn't thinking like along these lines of something like this. Within a couple of years, I'll own like 10 franchises or something like that. So I like the way, younger people are thinking big and being entrepreneurs.
Oh, absolutely.
After graduating from Eastern Michigan University in 2001, he planned to continue his career with the chain by opening a franchise until he took a look at the company's size. It had gotten too big and had become sort of impersonal, Fairbanks says, and that wasn't the kind of company I wanted to be a part of. When I heard about Hungry Howie's, it was exactly what I was looking for. He thought the Madison Heights, Michigan-based company offered a great product and an established clientele, but he also saw Hungry Howie's growth potential and liked that he could have an impact on the brand's success. At the time, Hungry Howie's wanted to expand into the Charlotte area, and it tapped Fairbanks to lead the charge. He moved to North Carolina, spending his first 3 months living in hotels. He worked for nearly a year preparing for the launch. He says, by being on site every day and interacting with my customers, I was able to find out exactly what was going on and continually improve my business. He declines to say how much he invested in his restaurants, but it cost between $91,000 and $282,000.
Right.
$282,000 to open a Hungry Howie's restaurant. They're a privately held company. They have over 500 locations in 23 states. As many as 50 stores are added each year. So it's an interesting article how, someone of his age must have gotten some pretty good experience of what was an entrepreneur thinking even in college, and now he looks like he's well on his way to opening a bunch of them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great story. It's always great to hear, because usually, when you think of franchising, Don, you don't usually think of somebody maybe like in their 20s,
Right.
I don't think it's the typical franchisee. I always remember a great article. I'm going to have to look somewhere in my archives to see if I can find it, because I have so many of these. But I remember these two young fellas, and in fact, they were in New Jersey. I think they graduated, and their parents bought them a Cinerama franchise. I think they're in the northern part of Jersey. But I always thought that was a great story, I mean, going to college, you graduate, and their parents, as a gift, buy them a franchise. And,
right.
They're still running that franchise to this day. So it's just, it's always great to see, younger. And this gentleman, I mean, he was thinking big at a pretty young age, it sounds like,
Right.
And, it's fantastic. I think it's
Yeah, definitely. Here's also something, keeping the theme with having Julie Bennett on the show from the book Franchise Times Guide to Selecting, Buying, and Owning a Franchise. She has these things throughout the book. It says, report from the trenches. And I thought this was pretty interesting.
Yeah, these are great.
For someone thinking of investing in a franchise, some question and answers here. It's franchisee Bill Kaufman. He's an Allegra printing franchise, and we're very familiar with that franchise. First thing it says, Marty, what do you do on a daily basis? He goes, I've never run a press or done production. I do outside sales, buy equipment, and handle the administration. How long did it take you to break even? He goes, I made 10 cents the first day. He says 10 cents the first day I was open for selling one copy.
Right.
He says, my wife was not thrilled. It took us close to a year to break even, but we haven't had a down year since.
Oh, that.
So, I definitely would have been upset with the 10 cents on the first day.
Absolutely.
10 cents can't buy you much anymore these days. It says, how do you earn money? Can you make a good living running a quick print shop? He goes, I have to sit down and figure the pricing on each job. What's the cost to run the equipment? How many hours should it take someone to print the job? And what's that person's hourly rate? Then I punch all those numbers into a computer program, and it gives me a price that provides a good margin. Yes, I'm making a good living, he says, doing over $1 million in sales. What's the most difficult part? Hiring and keeping good people, he says. My production manager and pressmen are career people. If one leaves, it can take 6 months to 2 years to train a new one. I mean, like in a lot of businesses, Marty, your employees are key. Got to have some good people with you. Who should not be a franchisee of this category? He goes, I've seen people buy a printing franchise, then run a press all day. They just bought themselves a job. If you just want a job, work in a bait shop or a bar. I guess he gave some pretty interesting industries there. And no one should go into this who's not prepared to work hard, which is always common theme and answer we get for a lot of the people we've interviewed on the show.
Right.
Obviously there's really no shortcuts. You have to work hard in any business, franchise or non-franchise.
Oh, absolutely.
And last question, what advice do you have for someone considering a printing franchise? He says, make sure you have plenty of working capital. I had some savings, or I wouldn't have made it, he says.
Right.
Also, he says, research how much structure your franchise or will impose and decide if you're comfortable with it. Allegra doesn't tell me what equipment to buy, and if you walk into my shop, it will not look like another unit doing $1.5 million in sales. I like it that way. You must be comfortable with technology and change. To keep good employees, you must pay them well. I pay good wages and provide health insurance, vacation, sick days, and 401k plans. Wow. So here's a franchisee who, even though he made 10 cents the first day, he's doing well, and he gave some good practical advice, at least for this industry, but some of it is in franchising in general.
That's interesting. I mean, it's like you say, Don, employees are important to all businesses, but that's, here he's paying, health benefits and where a lot of I think of franchises, I think of like fast food, Subway, McDonald's, it's a low hourly rate. So it's, and the book is full of stories just like that most people can actually just relate to.
Right.
It really is fantastic.
That's what I like about the book, and that's why we really started the show.
Right.
To, tell these type of stories.
Right, absolutely.
And, really get input from all different people and all different levels of franchising.
Right. I don't want to steal Julie's thunder. As you were mentioning, Don, we have a great show today. We're meeting with franchise author Julie Bennett, and Julie just wrote the Franchise Times Guide to Selecting, Buying, and Owning a Franchise. And Julie is a regular contributor to our favorite magazine, Franchise Times, which you and I think is his best franchise magazine out there.
Yes.
And writes the Franchise Insight column for StartupJournal.com, which I've been on many times, which is the Wall Street Journal site for entrepreneurs. And Julie's articles appeared in Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, and Hispanic Business Journal. So Hi, Julie. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning to both of you.
How you doing today, Julie?
Okay, except I'm no longer doing Franchise Insight for
You're
the
not.
online Wall Street Journal.
Apologize.
They have gone through so many changes at that publication.
They have, okay.
Yes, and things are up in the air right now.
Gotcha.
I write a lot for the print journal, however.
Yes, oh, absolutely. You're all over the place. It's Julie, joining me is my co-host, Don Johnson, and I know, Don, that you to say hi to Julie.
Yeah, Julie, it's appreciate you coming on the show, and been really excited for a few weeks now to talk to you about this book. It seems like you put big time hours into putting this together, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, I really did, almost like a franchisee.
Fantastic. Well, it's a great book, Julie. I mean, as Don and I were saying, I believe this is going to be, one of the must-reads in franchising. One of the authors we had on the show, I think you might know, Michael Gerber, author of The E-Myth. I mean, that's usually required reading for franchisees, and I think that this book is going to be the same thing as well. It's going to be required reading for anyone looking to buy a franchise. You did a fantastic job with it.
Why, thank you.
Julie, we like to start off by asking our guests where you're calling from today.
I'm calling from my home office in Northbrook, Illinois.
Oh,
it's
great.
4 degrees outside.
Oh, geez. Pretty cold out there.
Yes.
Oh, that's something. We'll stay indoors today.
I certainly will.
Get your fireplace going.
I'm going to brew my own Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
There you go. You heard that part. We'll have to talk about that. Julie, can we talk a little bit about your background as a writer, and how you, I'm always interested in finding out how people got involved in franchising.
I got involved in franchising by default. I'm a freelance writer. I was working for the Chicago Tribune, the Wall Street Journal, and a publication called Crane's Chicago Business.
Okay.
They decided to start a franchise magazine, which they eventually sold to John Hamburger in Minneapolis, and it is Franchise Times. So they asked me to join that staff, and that's how I got involved.
Fantastic.
Interesting. Why did you write the book, Julie, Franchise Times Guide to Selecting, Buying, and Owning a Franchise? What was the purpose behind that?
Through the years, I've interviewed hundreds of franchisees, and most of them are happy and prosperous and glad they got into it. But I've also interviewed people who said, buying this franchise was the worst mistake of my life.
Wow, that's interesting.
And I wrote the book for that second group to help them evaluate whether they should have been a franchisee in the first place and to help them make a reasoned decision about a franchise purchase.
That's interesting. So you got a lot of great stories. Don and I have been doing the radio show, Julie, for so it's a little over a year now. I mean, and I just think of all the stories that we've had, since doing the show. I can't imagine all the stories that you have, because you've been, in this industry for such a long time now. I imagine I could, and you could talk our ears off, as far as the worst stories you have. And the book really shows that, I mean, a lot of times you can't put it down, as Don and I were just talking about the Allegra story,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's fascinating. Very
and I called all those franchisees their reports from the trenches at random.
Really?
Yes,
That's
well, almost at random. I called franchise companies and said, I want to talk to somebody articulate, but then you don't want them to give you their best franchisee. Absolutely. So I'd say a state, somebody articulate and say Texas.
Right.
And then they'd have to come up with someone to talk to.
Great.
Do you think, Julie, a lot of times people on the other side didn't have the great experience investing in a franchise? You think a big reason for that was their lack of due diligence initially and, rushing to make a decision going into that franchise? I know there's several reasons, but that probably is a big one, right?
Absolutely. In fact, often I'll say, well, how many franchisees did you call from the system before you opened? Oh, 1 or 2. Or I walked into one and it seemed to be going well. In my book, I suggest that you call 60 franchisees from the system.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
That's something Marty and I really stress a lot, on the show as we're talking to people, and to really do their due diligence, speak to franchisees, remind them about the UFOC and that all the franchisees are listed in that book, and just make sure everything's 100% go, and that you don't rush into things. I mean, it's so important. I mean, this is, Marty, you brought it up. It becomes like a marriage to the franchise. It's something you're going to be doing for a while. Just make sure you're making the right decision.
Absolutely.
What changes have you seen in franchising over the last 15 years, Julie?
Well, when I started going to franchise conventions, it was really a good old boy network. Most of the franchises were started by white men, and when they selected franchisees, my friend Everett Wallace says they fished from the same pond.
Right.
Today, a lot of franchises are owned by corporations and private equity groups, and we're beginning to see female and minority franchisees. When I interviewed the first African-American couple who joined Alpha Graphics maybe 10, 12 years ago, the woman said, when we go to a convention, everybody knows who we are. Nowadays, I don't think that's true. When you go to a convention, you do see a diversity of faces.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, Julie. I help people nationwide franchise financing, and I see all different ages of people, and women, minorities, veterans, across the board. It's that's really you're right. I agree with you on that. There's been a big change there.
Right. Yeah, certainly more women today too, Julie. I guess Don and I have noticed since we've been doing this, which is a great thing. It's to see that. And just also the shows are fantastic, Julie. I'm always amazed at the number of new concepts that come about every year. I think it gets overwhelming. And I think you might have referenced that in the book. For someone looking to buy a franchise, I mean, there's this, was it 2,500, 3,000 concepts to choose from? Where do you begin? It's mind-boggling.
And there are always some odd ones.
Yes. There are, which I'm sure you've come across, in your experience.
Yeah, we were just at Franchise Expo South, and the most unusual one was Eliza J., and it is providing upscale porta potties to women and other events.
Interesting.
I mean, they're basically advertising everything, these days. And hey, if it's profitable and if it's a system, it makes it easier for someone to invest in the business. It's been proven. Why not? Basically.
Right.
Right.
Julie, what else? Besides, you mentioned the different types of people, diversity, large corporations. What other changes, have you seen in your experience?
I think franchising is getting a lot more professional. It used to be that franchisees were mom and pop operators. They owned one, maybe two fast food restaurants or lube shops. Now, franchisees can own hundreds of units.
Right.
And they're running it like a business. One franchisee I interviewed here, Chuck James, owns, I think, 34 Burger Kings, and he says it's like running 34 different $1 to $2 million businesses.
Wow, that's incredible.
He has an MBA from Wharton.
Right.
And a lot of people with good business skills are getting involved now.
Interesting.
Right. Also, a lot of people who own another type of business, keeping that and then investing in a franchise. And a lot of people going into franchising are going into it knowing they want to start up. They're signing 3-store deals or multiple deals as opposed to just opening up one and then seeing what happens. That's probably another big change.
That's a big change that I don't like at all. I feel there are too many people who go into franchising, then at the last minute, I write a lot about Discovery Day and how that's an emotional high. And during Discovery Day, and they're so sure they're going to be a success. Instead of just buying one franchise, they buy 3 or sign on to develop an entire state.
Right.
I believe they should open that first franchise, devote all their time and energy to it, and see how it works. And if they're doing well, then expand. But if you're a novice to franchising and you have to develop a huge territory by selling units to other franchisees, it's a setup for failure. You're not going to make it.
And that's what I liked about your book too, Julie. I found even one of the quotes, on the back cover saying you're brutally honest when you talk about franchising. You don't paint like this rosy picture. It's that's very interesting. Go ahead, Don.
I was just going to also add, you started going into a little bit, Julie, but as far as who are today's franchisees, is there anything else you wanted to add to that? We know about the diversity and, people looking to, really a different type of investor. What else has changed in that category as well?
We're seeing a lot more corporate dropouts or early retirees, people with solid backgrounds in business or sales getting involved in franchising.
Right.
A lot of former teachers are buying these tutoring centers or after-school art programs.
Right.
But there's a little bit of everybody. There are pilots and nurses and PR specialists. And my favorite from the book is the woman who owns a Honey Baked Ham franchise.
Mm-hmm.
She used to work in a dolphin show.
Yeah.
She was the one who held the fish in her mouth.
Right. That's incredible. It's a great story. Yeah.
That's what's interesting about franchising. You can really not have any type of background in that specific type of franchise you end up investing in.
Right.
And, we've had some franchise consultants on the show, Julie,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something Marty and I really, believe in a lot is, people getting as much help as possible to make sure they're making the right decision. Because a lot of people might like, we always bring it up, Marty, hey, I like donuts, I'll open up a Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
Oh.
That's a big one.
Bad idea.
Absolutely.
But, that's, I guess that's what's fueling the growth of franchising is the way that the franchise or sets up the system. Really, most people can have, success in that business as long as they have the passion and work hard and all the things, what the franchisor looks for before they okay them.
Right.
Yeah, so you'd probably agree with that, right, Julie?
I do. Although when I was first exposed to franchising way back 15 years ago, I felt that the system was tipped much too far in the direction of the franchisor.
Right.
And I wondered how anyone could sign on as a franchisee because you put up all the money, you take all the risk, and you have to pay your franchisor a royalty once a month, whether you've made any profit or not.
Absolutely.
But through the years, I've seen that it's really a pretty even balance and that all those rules and regulations are there to benefit the entire system.
That's interesting. So has your attitude about franchising changed, Julie, since you started this, getting involved in this like 15 years ago?
Yes, it certainly has changed. I would say I am far more sympathetic to franchisors who might be getting into a little bit of trouble.
Right.
I can understand that they are working hard to help their franchisees make money.
Right. Interesting.
And as for the system, there's a great story from Becky Courtjohn in the book. She's an express personnel franchisee in Dayton, Ohio. And she says, follow the system. If the procedures manual said to write all reports with my left hand in red ink on Monday through Wednesday, and with my right hand in black ink on Thursday and Friday, I'd do it. I will follow everything because it works.
That's very powerful. I mean, that really describes franchising in a nutshell, Julie.
Doesn't it?
Absolutely.
That kind of reminded me, Marty, of that. Who was the client we had on?
Julie, we had a Liberty Tax. We had one of Liberty Tax's most successful franchisees on the show, and he basically said the same thing. He said he wasn't a creative person. All he wanted to do was just follow the system, and that's why he became one of the most successful franchisees for Liberty Tax. That's all he did. He said all I did was what they told me to do, and I achieved this great success. He came in with the attitude.
His whole attitude was like, just tell me what I have to do. Kind of like what you were just bringing up with that particular story, Julie. And that was his whole attitude. Tell me what to do. I'll do it. I'll work hard. And he's doing quite well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. It's often, if you talk to a franchisor and say, why did that franchisee fail? He'll always say, well, he didn't follow the system.
Absolutely.
Of course, that may or may not be true. But.
Right, absolutely. Julie, what types of characteristics do you think make successful franchisees?
Well, you were talking about one of the big ones, which is being hardworking.
Right.
And I think that's very important. You have to be enthusiastic about the business. You have to create an excitement before the business opens. You have to go through your community, tell them you're opening up, and get them in there the first day.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to hire, discipline, and motivate employees. There are personality tests that franchisors give franchisee candidates.
Right.
And when I took all three, I flunked them.
Isn't that something?
on this very point, because they said I'd be too empathetic to my franchisee, to my employees,
right.
and they'd walk all over me.
That's something.
That's a very important point. You have to have good communication skills. You have to be talking up your franchise all the time.
Right.
You have to have a sense of humor.
Sure.
And I'll go back to Becky Courtjohn, who said that she had an angry client call her up and say, that young lady you sent over here to work is painting her toenails at our reception desk. And Becky didn't miss a beat. She said, what color?
That's something. That's great, isn't it?
Isn't that perfect?
That's
you
fantastic.
have to roll with the punches.
Absolutely. Right. That's great.
And also, as you said before, you have to be well capitalized.
Sure.
So many franchises have to close in that first year because they don't have the money to keep going.
True.
Yeah, I come across that every day as we're pre-qualifying people for financing, Julie, and a lot of times we're trying to tell people to sometimes not fund the whole business themselves. They'll never be as strong a borrower as they are now. Kind of leverage yourself, get that working capital, which is a nice part of getting a loan. So you have that first 3 to 6 months of expenses paid for. But that happens a lot. People don't want to get a business loan. They finance it themselves, and 6 months later they're looking around for money. And
Right. Don't drain your house of home equity now.
Right.
Wait until you need it to make payroll.
Absolutely.
So you've, going back to a previous question, I just wanted to know the growth of franchising. You feel a big part of that is basically overall more protection for the franchisee between the UFOC, the franchise agreement, and with a lot of groups and associations protecting the franchisee. Is that a big part of this, Julie?
I think that and the franchisee legal community. We have a great number of attorneys who are ready to sue franchisors when franchisees feel exploited or gypped out of something that they deserve.
Right, absolutely.
Right, it's a very good point.
It is.
And possibly talk a little bit, Julie, about the whole, I've seen a lot of franchisors from different countries come to the U.S., vice versa. I guess international franchising has, become real popular. You go to the franchise shows, and there's a lot of, people walking around, looking to grow that franchise internationally. I guess that's been another big change in franchising.
We are seeing a lot of foreign systems coming into the U.S. There was a franchise from Spain at Franchise Expo a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Trying
Interesting.
to drum up business in the States. There are fast food franchises that have come up from Mexico and Latin America, and they already have customers here because so many people have immigrated from those countries.
That's true. Makes a lot of sense.
Good point.
Absolutely.
What advice, Julie, would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur looking to buy a franchise?
Well, buy the book.
Yes.
It has 290 pages of advice. I think if I had to narrow it down to a few things, I'd say do serious due diligence on whatever concept you're looking at. Check out the franchise system. Check out the people running the company. Sometimes with a little bit of research, you can find that one of the executives was in bankruptcy with another franchise concept just a couple of years ago.
It's incredible.
Definitely, I would say, and this is going to make some people a little angry, I would say stay away from new franchise systems.
Mm-hmm.
If there are 30 or fewer units, don't do it.
Right.
The risk is much greater than the reward.
Absolutely.
And then finally, I'd reiterate, buy one unit. Don't buy a state. You're never going to succeed.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've never heard that before, Don, have we? I mean,
right.
A lot of the guests that we've had on the show, always talking about multi-unit, and, I like what Julie said. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, Why?
Definitely.
Just start off with the one unit and see if it works for you. I mean,
go slow. Just make sure you're happy, be successful at that place, then think about expansion. And as long as you have some protection from the franchisor, I guess that's why a lot of people they're scared that once they like the business, Julie, and they're having success, that their options for expansion will be limited because they didn't act early. It always puts the franchising in kind of a tough position.
It does, but I've just known too many franchisees who felt squeezed into a corner.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
These area development agreements have a tight schedule. You have to open one store and then within a couple of years open 5 more yourself, or find franchisees to report to you and open them. And a lot of those schedules are unrealistic, even for seasoned business people.
Right.
It's interesting.
So, just taking a step back a little bit, Julie, people listening to the show right now, and they're getting great advice from you, and they've been listening to franchise interviews, and they're like, so I'm hearing a lot of great stuff about franchising, and, there's magazines, books, trade shows, internet. What would you suggest starting out? What should they do? What's the best thing to do to lead them to the franchise that's the right fit for them? Like, what would you suggest?
I suggest picking up a directory or looking at an online directory to see which businesses are franchises. And then go out into your community and walk into these places and see if you can see yourself there.
Right.
Could you be behind the counter of a sub shop? Could you be making signs? I think a lot of franchise dreams would be nipped right there.
Right.
Then see if you like franchising, see what concepts you're comfortable with. And understand that best franchise for that concept might not even be in your area.
Right.
Then I suggest that you start reading business magazines, women's magazines, to see what other franchise companies might be out there. Contact everybody in your email list. The couple that opened the Cookies by Design franchise never even knew about it in my book until the franchisee's sister sent a catalog up from Texas and said, well, we have this great franchise. Why don't you check it out? I think the mistake people make is that they jump much too soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had one system on the show, Julie, Aaron's Sales and Lease, and they make their prospective franchisees actually work in the store for 3 weeks before they can make a decision. Don and I always thought that was fantastic, because how do you know unless you actually do it? Unless, as you said, you're actually in the place, you're just watching. What's a typical day like? So I think that's so important. I think that's great advice.
Right. The Mako franchisee I interviewed, who was a highway patrolman, spent a couple of months working for another Mako franchisee before he went to training. And he said that was terrific because
Absolutely.
Every time they mentioned something in training class, he knew why it was important.
Sure. Absolutely.
You mentioned before, and people listening might not know what it is, but a lot of just about all franchisors probably. I don't know a statistic on it, but they have discovery days. Why do you feel discovery days are so great for a franchisee, Julie?
Discovery days let you see the inside of a franchise company. You spend at least a day in headquarters, you get to meet all the executives. You get to meet the IT person who will help you when your computer system goes down, the marketing woman who will help you get your store open. And you can see if there are holes in a franchise. In the book, I say that most of the franchise headquarters I have visited are kind of ordinary places. A lot of them are in industrial parks.
Right.
If you go to a Discovery Day at a really posh office and it's a new franchise company, I'd worry about their priorities, whether they're going to have the money to support me later.
Sure.
And most important, you get to meet other people who are also looking at the franchise. You can
get
hear
their thoughts, yeah.
Right.
Get their thoughts, see what their questions are. And you can ask questions like, how long would it take to get my unit open? What parameters do you have for location? Can I talk to people who have open units in a community similar to mine? What help can they give me? It can also be pretty beguiling. In the book, I talk about going to a Discovery Day at Cousin Subs in Wisconsin just because they were nearby and I could drive there. And by the end of Discovery Day, I was ready to buy a sub shop myself. It was very convincing.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, all that, I mean, certainly great advice. We never really talked about that, Marty. Someone just, hey, go to some of your local franchises and just, hang out there a little while,
right.
See if you like, yeah. So Julie, say someone gets to the point, okay, they've done all this and they say, hey, for example, a sign franchise, that seems pretty interesting to me. And they go find a list of some of the top sign franchises and they get the information and they speak to them. Then they get that UFOC, the circular offer, which is very intimidating. They get it. A first-time person, never owned a business before. The franchisor by law has to send it to that prospect. They get it. What do you suggest they do at that point? It's a great question, right?
A lot of advice says call an attorney right away to go through it, but your ordinary attorney doesn't know about UFOCs.
Right.
You really have to talk to a franchisee attorney, and in the book I tell you how to find them. If you get 5 UFOCs, you're not going to pay a couple $1,000s for attorneys to go through them. So I tell you to look at a few of the highlights. Watch out for brand new franchise companies that haven't sold any units.
Right.
Check out the business experience of the franchisors. They usually do capsule biographies of the CEO, the CFO, the head of franchise operations. Check them out. Go to the internet. See if these people have been in jail or in bankruptcy or have been fired from another franchise system. Go to item 3, which is litigation, and see if a lot of lawsuits have been filed against this particular franchise company. And if there's a pattern, if a lot of franchisees have sued them because they felt they didn't get adequate support or that they were paying too much for their products, go to someone else right away.
Right.
That's what I like about the UFOC section, Julie. How you, in the book, you had the section, what to watch out for. I thought it made it easy for someone new to franchising, to kind of identify the importance to be careful of, So it's just very easy to read as well,
Well, that's what we aim for because when I started out, I found UFOCs terribly intimidating too.
Sure.
I mean, we've just been talking now for a little while. Obviously, you're just very, high on franchising. But what are a couple of the top reasons you like most about franchising, Julie?
I'd say the franchisees. I love going into a franchise when the franchisee is just opening up And she's so proud of her new premises and will show me around. This is the oven or the storeroom.
Right.
Right.
And probably brimming with confidence, too, going through
nice.
training. And
yes.
Yeah.
And then check back with them a couple years later and see how well they are doing.
Right.
And I've noticed that the franchisees with the most confidence, the ones with maybe a little chutzpah, who say, oh, in a few years I'll own 3 units
Right.
or 6 vans, they're the ones that usually do it.
Right.
That's something.
Do you think a lot of those people had confidence before choosing a franchise, or you really think they got a lot of that from the whole experience of
I think it's
starting
probably in their personalities to begin with.
Right.
I think negative people have trouble no matter what they do.
Looks like we'd have a lot of success in franchising, Marty.
There you go.
Oh, you two are so enthusiastic.
Thank you.
Why is Franchise Times the leading franchise magazine, Julie?
Because we approach franchising from a journalistic vantage point.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We have real reporters writing the articles.
Right.
And we do have columns written by attorneys and consultants, but we feel they're the best attorneys and consultants.
Yeah, it's so informative, Julie. I mean, this is one, I don't know about you, Don. I mean, for me, I could read Franchise Times, though, from cover to cover, front cover to back cover. I mean, it's just really, it's that informative. I always look forward to getting it, every single month. And
oh, yeah, the day I get it, I'm reading it. My wife gets angry. We're at the dinner table with our twins. I got twins, Julie, 3.5. And I'm sitting there reading. Yeah. and my wife gets mad when I read at the dinner table or afterwards as we're getting ready.
Oh, you should do that. I think one thing that adds to Franchise Times is the personality that our editor, Nancy Weingartner, has given it.
Yeah, she's great.
She has a funny column in the back. And
has.
it's hard to read the news in the front until you've read that.
Yeah, I loved her last one, too. She was talking about, I think the last one I was reading, Julie, was about Sunset Tan or something like L.A. Sunset Tan.
Yes.
Just fantastic. She was talking about going into the clubs, and as you said, it's their personality,
Mm-hmm.
It just shines through in their writing, and you feel like you know them.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Nancy did a nice article on this show, as a matter of fact, in the November-December issue, Julie. I don't know if you read that.
I did see it, yes.
She did, yeah. She wrote a great article on us, yeah, but it was just, you just kind of like get a feel for her personality, And the same thing with, was it Mary Jo?
Mary Jo Lawson is
just
wonderful.
You feel like you know her, talking about her family and her kids and things like that, It's just, and she relates it to franchising,
Mm-hmm.
It's just fantastic. They just do such a great job over there. So
and we'll see them at the franchise show coming up in D.C. in April, so we look forward to that.
Oh,
we certainly do. I'm putting on a seminar.
Are you really? Oh,
yes.
Great. Well, we're gonna have to. Don and I were upset because we didn't get autographed copies of our book, Julie. So we're gonna have to bring our book, get you to autograph it for us.
I had them sent out from Minneapolis.
That's what we thought. Yeah. So I'm gonna bring my book with me when I go to D.C. and you have to promise to sign it for me.
I certainly will.
What's the best way to get the book, Julie? I know you're all over the internet now. I did a search on you the other day in the book, and it looks like it's all over the place. But what's the best? Is there one best way to get it, or?
Well, I'd love it if people would walk into a Barnes & Noble and ask for it.
Okay, great.
However, it is available at barnesandnoble.com, and of course it's on Amazon and all the other websites.
Okay, great. We actually have it posted up on our website, franchiseinterviews.com, as well. There's a nice banner up there under our franchise book section. And Don and I are going to constantly plug this book, Julie, because again, we just think it's really fantastic. I haven't seen a book like this, and we've read a lot of them as well. I think we've read all of them, just about up to this point. So you just did such a great job. So it's an honor for us to have you on the show.
Why, thank you very much.
Thanks, Julie. And we're going to have you back in the near future.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie. Look forward to meeting you. It's a great book. Thank you. Great job.
We'll see you in Washington, Julie.
Okay.
Take care. Great show, huh, Don?
Yeah, just as we knew it would be.
Yeah, it's just fantastic.
Just gave so much great advice in several different areas. So
she sure did.
Information's invaluable.
Absolutely. And again, there's still things that I have to cover in the book. I mean, I haven't gone through. I'm about I would say about 80% done.
Right.
But it's incredible. I mean, you just go back and you can go to any section, it seems like, as well. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
definitely. I'm also going to add the book to a couple of my websites, and So.
Oh, absolutely. We have it up there on franchiseinterviews.com. So we have a new franchise book section as well. You know, we have like the E-Myth up there, and
right.
You know, so Julie's in good company. But great job today, Don. Nice.
Yeah, good job.
Interview, and I guess I'll be not having a show next week.
Right.
I'll be in Miami, so the following week we're going to have to post our schedule of upcoming shows for the month of February. It's hard to imagine February's here already.
Yeah.
It's like, where did January go, you know?
Well, sounds good. Have a good time down in Miami.
Thanks, Don, and I'll be speaking to you in 2 weeks.
Okay, great.
Have a great day, Don. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Blog Talk Radio.